What if I told you that the ground beneath you has not always been here? That the continents have wandered like slow-moving ghosts, that oceans have vanished and reappeared, that mountains have risen, fallen, and been born again. Welcome back to the Sleep Labs. Tonight, we're traveling backward, not decades, not centuries, but billions of years, to the beginning of everything familiar. To the times when the sky was red, when the air was thick with strange gases, when the earth itself was still deciding what it wanted to be. This is the story of ancient Earth, a planet in constant motion, shaped by fire, water, and time, and home to countless forgotten worlds that existed long before ours. Before we begin, sleepy friends, I'd love to know a little about you. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? What time is it where you are? Are you tucked into bed, drifting into stillness, or watching the world grow quiet outside your window? Tell me in the comments. I always love seeing how far these journeys travel, how small and connected this vast planet can feel. Because tonight, we're not just talking about Earth as it is. We're remembering what it was, molten and wild, frozen and lush, endlessly reinventing itself. We're walking through forgotten ages, through skies no one has seen in millions of years, through oceans that once covered everything. So breathe slowly and let your mind sink through layers of time. These are 100 facts about ancient Earth, our first home, and the countless worlds it has been before this one. Fact 1. When Earth was born, it wasn't blue or green, it was glowing. More than 4.5 billion years ago, our planet began as molten rock, swirling within a sea of cosmic dust and fire. The young sun blazed hotter than it does now, and the newborn Earth spun faster, days lasting only a few hours. The air was thick with volcanic gases and the smell of iron. Lightning cracked through clouds of ash, striking oceans of lava. To look at it then would be to see a world still being forged, alive, chaotic, and impossibly young. Fact 2. The moon was born from violence. Scientists believe that a planet-sized body called the collided with the early Earth. The impact was so immense that molten debris was launched into orbit. Glowing arcs of rock that circled the planet and eventually gathered into a single sphere, our moon. For centuries afterward, the moon shone brighter and closer, so close that it caused tides hundreds of feet high, reshaping the surface of the world each night. It has been watching us ever since, a silent witness to everything that followed. Fact 3. The first rain on Earth may have lasted thousands of years. As the planet cooled, steam rose from the boiling oceans, condensed in the darkened sky, and began to fall, a ceaseless deluge that filled the world's first seas. The sound of it must have been endless, like the planet breathing for the first time. Each drop carried fragments of minerals and elements, mixing in the heat of volcanic basins, creating the chemical soups that would one day spark life itself. Fact 4. Before life existed, Earth's atmosphere would have been unrecognizable. No oxygen, no blue sky. Instead, it was a thick orange haze made of carbon dioxide, methane, and sulfur. The horizon glowed with volcanic light, and the sun appeared dim and distant, filtered through toxic clouds. It was beautiful in its own way, an alien Earth, where storms were made of ash and the seas steamed, beneath skies that never cleared. Fact 5. the first life on Earth wasn't made of plants or animals, but of microbes, tiny single-celled organisms that formed more than 3.5 billion years ago. They lived in shallow seas and left behind their mark in strange, layered rock formations called stromatolites. Some of these ancient structures still exist today in places like Shark Bay, Australia, living fossils quietly breathing oxygen into the water as they have for billions of years. In their simplicity lies the oldest heartbeat of our world. Fact 6. Long before trees, the land was barren, a landscape of bare rock and silent winds. But in the seas, life began to experiment with form. Cells learned to join together, to specialize, to build bodies with purpose. The first multicellular creatures appeared, drifting like ghosts in the dark water. They had no bones, no eyes, no concept of time. They floated through an alien ocean, unaware that they were the ancestors of everything that would come next. Fact 7. Around 2.5 billion years ago, the Great Oxidation Event changed everything. Microbes evolved a way to use sunlight, photosynthesis, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. It flooded the atmosphere, turning the sky blue for the first time and rusting the surface of the planet as iron reacted with air. For most life, it was poison. Entire species were wiped out. But for others, it was opportunity, a new kind of energy, a new kind of world. Oxygen didn't just color the sky. It rewrote the future of life itself. Fact 8. Earth has frozen over completely at least twice in its history. Global ice ages so deep they're called snowball Earth events. Oceans turned solid, ice stretched from pole to equator, and sunlight reflected back into space. Yet even then, life endured. Microbes huddled beneath the ice, surviving in volcanic vents and deep-sea cracks. And when the planet finally thawed, it did so violently. Floods, storms, and a burst of new evolution that reshaped everything. From the brink of total stillness, Earth learned how to breathe again. Fact 9. Continents were not always where they are now. Over hundreds of millions of years, they have drifted like slow ships through time. They've collided to form supercontinents, massive landmasses like Rodinia, Pannotia, and Pangaea, and then split apart again. Mountains rose and fell. Oceans opened and closed. Every piece of land you've ever stood on has traveled across the planet, carried by invisible currents in the mantle below. The world beneath our feet is never still. Fact 10. There was a time, more than 500 million years ago, when life exploded into diversity. The Cambrian explosion. In a geologic instant, the oceans filled with strange new forms, trilobites with armored shells, predators with serrated limbs, creatures with eyes that could see for the first time. It was a dawn of awareness, a blooming of complexity after billions of years of simplicity. The Earth had learned to imagine, and from that moment forward, life never stopped reinventing itself. Fact 11. When the first plants colonized land, the world must have seemed enormous to them, endless stretches of bare rock and silent wind. Around 470 million years ago, simple mosses and liverworts began to creep across the damp edges of shorelines. They clung to stone, pulled minerals from dust, and slowly began to turn rock into soil. Over millions of years, they changed the air itself, releasing more oxygen, creating shade, and stabilizing the land. The first roots cracked stone. The first leaves caught sunlight. The first forests whispered across the planet, transforming it from a barren sphere into something green and alive. The world had learned to breathe on land. Fact 12. The Devonian period, often called the Age of Fish, was also the age when life took its first hesitant steps onto land. The seas were full of armored fish, some the size of cars, their jaws lined with plates instead of teeth. But near the shallows, strange creatures were evolving limbs from fins, jointed bones, primitive lungs, muscles built for gravity. They would eventually become the first amphibians, explorers between two worlds. Imagine that moment. A creature dragging itself out of the water, blinking at sunlight that no eye had ever truly seen before. The air must have felt heavy, alien, and full of possibility. Fact 13. Trees changed everything. Around 360 million years ago, plants began to grow tall, stretching toward the sky in ways no living thing had before. Forests spread across continents, vast, humid jungles of giant ferns, towering club mosses, and horsetails thicker than a man's leg. They drew carbon dioxide from the air and buried it underground in their fallen trunks, cooling the planet and reshaping the atmosphere. The oxygen levels soared. Fires became more common, lightning igniting dry wood in an endless cycle of destruction and renewal. The earth was learning rhythm, the slow breathing of growth and decay. Fact 14. Before the age of dinosaurs, the earth belonged to insects. Some dragonflies had wingspans longer than a seagull's, and centipedes the size of cars crawled through the undergrowth. They thrived in the oxygen-rich air, their bodies growing larger than physics allows today. The forests were alive with their clicking, buzzing, and hissing, a soundscape of primitive life echoing through steaming jungles. No birds sang, no mammals stirred. Just the hum of insects and the whisper of ancient leaves. For millions of years, they ruled unchallenged. Fact 15. The Permian period ended in silence. Around 252 million years ago, something catastrophic happened. A mass extinction that wiped out over 90% of all species on Earth. Volcanoes erupted across what is now Siberia, releasing carbon dioxide and ash that turned the sky dark and poisoned the oceans. Temperatures soared. The air became thin and unbreathable. Forests burned, reefs dissolved, and the world nearly died. It took millions of years for life to recover, and when it did, the survivors would build a new world, the one that would soon belong to the dinosaurs. Fact 16. In the Triassic period, the Earth began again. Deserts stretched across the interior of the supercontinent Pangaea, and the air shimmered with heat. But from that harshness came innovation. The first dinosaurs appeared, small, quick, upright creatures competing for survival with massive reptiles and early mammals. The first crocodiles evolved in the same age, along with the ancestors of turtles and lizards. It was a world of experimentation where evolution was sketching new blueprints in the dust. And above it all, the stars shone down on a single, enormous landmass, surrounded by a single, endless ocean dot. Fact 17. Rain has not always sounded the same. In the early Mesozoic era, before the Earth was covered in dense forests, raindrops fell onto bare ground and stone, making a sharp, hollow sound. Only later, when the jungles returned, did it begin to sound like it does today, softened by leaves, cushioned by moss, muted by the breath of the trees. The sound of rain as we know it is not eternal. It is the sound of life cushioning the earth. Fact 18. Deep within the crust, the earth never stopped moving. The continents drifted slowly apart, carrying ecosystems with them like passengers on rafts. The creatures on each landmass evolved in isolation, becoming unique, familiar, and strange all at once. What was once one world became many, and when the continents later collided again, their inhabitants met for the first time, sometimes peacefully, sometimes fatally. The story of the earth is not one of stability, but of separation and reunion, again and again, across the span of deep time. Fact 19. During some ages, the poles were warm and lush. Palm trees once grew in what is now Alaska. Crocodiles swam in the Arctic. The planet has been both furnace and freezer, breathing between extremes for eons. And yet, life endured. Each climate, each catastrophe, each slow drift of continents forced adaptation, creation, and renewal. The Earth's history is a balance between destruction and survival, a pendulum that never stops swinging. Fact 20. Beneath your feet, deep within the stone, are the remnants of every world that came before ours. Ancient ocean floors turned to limestone. Volcanic ash compressed into shale. The dust of forests, older than time itself, pressed into coal. Every mountain carries memories of sea life. Every grain of sand was once part of something vast. The ground you walk on is not still. It's the slow pulse of deep time, the echo of billions of years of transformation. Earth is not just where we live. It is everything that ever lived, folded into stone. Fact 21. When the first dinosaurs appeared, they were not the massive, thundering giants we often imagine. They were small, quick, and uncertain creatures, living in the shadows of the much larger reptiles that ruled the Triassic. But evolution rewards persistence, and over millions of years, these humble beginnings gave rise to an empire that would span continents and epochs. Early dinosaurs were warm-blooded, fast, and social. They hunted in groups, cared for their young, and adapted to every environment the Earth offered them. It's easy to forget that before they were giants, they were survivors, and it was their patience that built an age. Fact 22. The world of the Jurassic period was a paradise of movement. The supercontinent Pangaea had split into two, Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south, and between them stretched vast, warm seas. The air was thick with oxygen, the skies alive with early pterosaurs, and the ground trembled under the steps of sauropods, the length of city streets. Ferns and conifers covered the land, and rivers cut through lush valleys that would one day become deserts. The days were long, the nights soft and humid, and life thrived in the stillness between eruptions and storms. To walk through a Jurassic forest would have been to step into a cathedral of green, where the air itself seemed to breathe. Fact 23. Volcanoes were the sculptors of that ancient world. Entire mountain ranges were born in fire and ash, only to erode away over eons and rise again somewhere new. The continents floated on molten rock, pulled by forces we can barely imagine. At times, the air filled with smoke for centuries, sunlight dimmed, and the climate changed overnight, a reminder that the surface of the earth is fragile, and what feels eternal is always temporary. Even today, the continents move as fast as your fingernails grow, carrying us slowly, silently, toward a future continent that will form long after we're gone. Fact 24. Beneath the seas, life was reinventing itself again. Coral reefs, long destroyed by earlier extinctions, returned intricate worlds built by small, patient creatures. Colonies working together to create cities of color. Prehistoric ammonites drifted through the waters, their coiled shells catching sunlight as they rose and fell with the tides. Giant marine reptiles ruled the deep ichthyosaurs, shaped like dolphins, plesiosaurs with necks like serpents. The ocean was a mirror to the land, filled with predators and prey, with songs and silences. Every drop was alive with movement, and every current carried the memory of something ancient. Fact 25. During this time, the first birds took to the air. They were not graceful at first, creatures caught between worlds, with teeth in their beaks and claws on their wings. Archaeopteryx, the earliest known bird, still bore the bones of its dinosaur ancestors, yet it could glide through the warm Jurassic skies. Feathers, which had first evolved for warmth or display, became tools for flight. The air filled with colors and sounds it had never known before. Every wing beat was a small act of defiance against gravity, a declaration that life could now move through 3 dimensions instead of 2. Fact 26. The Cretaceous period was Earth at its most alive. Flowers appeared for the first time, painting the planet in color. Until then, the world had been green and brown, filled with ferns and conifers, but now came blossoms of red, yellow, and blue, an explosion of scent and form that changed the way life interacted. Insects co-evolved alongside them, pollinating in exchange for nectar. Bees learned to dance. Butterflies learned to follow the light. The planet was waking into beauty, and the hum of life became music. Fact 27. The continents continued their slow, inevitable drift. South America was separating from Africa, creating the first outlines of the Atlantic Ocean. Australia was pulling away from Antarctica, while India began its long journey northward, a voyage that would eventually build the Himalaya. The planet itself was restless, constantly reshaping its face, constantly rewriting the map. If you could watch from space across millions of years, you would see the continents slide and swirl like oil on water, drifting, merging, breaking apart again, never still. Fact 28. Beneath the shade of cycads and magnolias, enormous dinosaurs thrived, triceratops grazing in herds, hadrosaurs calling across river valleys, and tyrannosaurs stalking the edges of forests. Their world was rich and full, a balance of predator and prey, of growth and decay. Insects buzzed through the air. Mammals, still small and nocturnal, darted between roots and shadows, waiting for their chance. Every ecosystem was complete, every life dependent on another. For 100 million years, this balance held an age of giants beneath the most vivid sky the planet had ever known. Fact 29. But nothing lasts forever. Around 66 million years ago, the balance broke. A mountain-sized asteroid struck the Earth with unimaginable force, releasing energy greater than all the nuclear weapons humanity would ever build. In an instant, forests ignited, oceans boiled and the sky darkened with ash. The shockwaves circled the planet, and the age of dinosaurs ended. Yet in the quiet aftermath, among the ruins, the smallest survivors endured. Mammals, birds, and the seeds of future forests. From extinction came renewal, a pattern written deep into the planet's memory. Fact 30. The Earth we know today, the one of mountains and oceans, of storms and calm skies, is only the latest version of itself. Beneath the continents lie the fossils of ancient seas. Beneath the seas lie the ashes of ancient mountains. The planet is a palimpsest, written and rewritten by time. Every gust of wind carries dust that was once bone. Every river carries fragments of forgotten worlds. To live on Earth is to live on the edge of eternity. A momentary breath in a story 4.5 billion years long. Fact 31. When the asteroid fell, it didn't just end an era. It cleared the stage for a new one. In the silence that followed, the Earth was a scarred planet. The skies were choked with soot, sunlight dimmed, and the surface cooled for years. But life is stubborn. Beneath the rubble, in burrows and caves, the small, warm-blooded creatures that had lived in the dinosaur's shadow began to emerge. They were mammals, survivors of fire and darkness. They scavenged, adapted, multiplied. Over time, they grew larger, more varied, and began to fill the empty spaces left behind. The planet was beginning again, slowly, quietly, rebuilding from its own ruin. Fact 32. The Paleocene world was strange, a quiet aftermath full of opportunity. Forests regrew across the continents, lush with ferns, palms, and early flowering plants. In the branches, tiny primates leapt from tree to tree, their eyes adapting to dim light. On the ground, early hoofed mammals browsed among the undergrowth, while strange flightless birds stalked like predators. It was a world in transition, still fragile, still haunted by what had come before. Yet it was alive in ways it had never been, warm, green, and brimming with potential. Fact 33. The Eocene brought warmth, a global greenhouse where the poles were lush and green, and crocodiles swam in what is now the Arctic Circle. The atmosphere was thick with carbon dioxide, and the Earth's surface shimmered with heat. Rainforests stretched across continents, and strange mammals flourished. Early horses no larger than cats, whale ancestors that still walked on land, and primates that began to resemble something faintly familiar. The world was rich and alive, but beneath its beauty, it carried the seeds of change, the slow cooling that would one day bring ice. Fact 34. Somewhere during this time, the first true whales returned to the sea. Their ancestors had once been land-dwelling carnivores, wading through warm coastal waters in search of prey. But over millions of years, their bodies changed, legs shrinking, tails flattening, nostrils sliding up their skulls to become blowholes. They gave birth in the water, sang to one another through miles of ocean, and never came back to land. In a single lineage, life had reversed itself, trading gravity for buoyancy, breathing air but belonging to the sea. Fact 35. The Oligocene brought new order to chaos. The continents were settling into their modern shapes, and the climate began to cool. Grasslands spread for the first time, transforming the planet's surface. With grass came grazers, and with grazers came predators. Hoofed animals learned to run, evolving speed and endurance, while cats, dogs, and bears adapted to hunt in open plains. Dust rose from dry soil, and the rhythm of life began to follow the pattern we still see today: migration, predation, survival, renewal. The Earth was finding a new balance. Fact 36. In the Miocene, the forests retreated, replaced by vast, open savannas. Apes descended from the trees, learning to walk upright, freeing their hands for tools and gestures. Elephants evolved tusks and memory, capable of crossing continents in search of water. Whales grew to immense sizes in the deep, while mountains rose along fault lines, their peaks reaching into the cold sky. This was a time of transformation, a rehearsal for everything that would come, a planet preparing for consciousness. Fact 37. The Himalayas were young then, still rising from the collision of India and Asia. Their birth changed the world. As their peaks pushed higher, they altered global wind patterns and trapped moisture, shaping the monsoons. Their erosion pulled carbon dioxide from the air, cooling the planet further. Snow began to linger year-round, glaciers carving deep valleys. The air grew thinner, the light sharper. The Earth, once hot and humid, was now learning the rhythm of ice and thaw, the breath of the modern world. Fact 38. The Pliocene was the prelude to the world we know, recognizable coastlines, familiar species, yet a wildness beyond imagination. The first hominins walked upright across Africa's grasslands, using simple tools to crack bones and gather roots. The oceans teemed with life, including Megalodon, a shark 3 times the size of a great white. Forests burned and regrew, ice spread across the poles, and the Earth's pulse slowed. Each glacial breath drew closer to the moment when intelligence would awaken, and the planet would begin to dream of itself. Fact 39. Then came the Ice Ages. Sheets of ice stretched from the poles toward the equator, carving the land into what we see today. Entire ecosystems shifted, following the cold's advance and retreat. Mammoths, woolly rhinos, and saber-toothed cats roamed beneath auroras that shimmered across frozen skies. Human ancestors learned to make fire, to build shelters, to survive winters that lasted generations. The planet was fierce, but it was beautiful, a world of clarity and silence, where life endured against the vastness of ice. Fact 40. When the ice finally began to retreat, rivers returned, forests spread again, and humanity stepped fully into the light. The world was transformed, mountains exposed, lakes forming where glaciers had been, coastlines reshaped by rising seas. It was the dawn of memory, of myth, of language. The first civilizations were still far in the future, but already the Earth had given everything it could: minerals for tools, fire for warmth, stars for guidance. Ancient Earth had become the home we know, and every step we take now is still over its bones. Fact 41. When the first humans walked the Earth, the world was still half. Vast glaciers stretched across the northern continents, carving valleys that would one day become homes and cities. To the south, grasslands rippled under wide, endless skies. The air was cleaner, sharper, filled with scents of pine, cold stone, and animal musk. Our ancestors lived in small groups, wandering across plains and coasts, following the herds, the seasons, the stars. They knew fire not as technology, but as a companion, warmth, protection, light against the night. Theirs was a world both terrifying and sacred, where every mountain and river still carried the weight of myth. Fact 42. Fire changed everything. It offered more than heat. It gave humanity control over time. With fire, night became longer. Food could be cooked, softened, shared. Predators kept their distance. Around the flames, language began to form, first as sounds, then stories, then memory. The glow of firelight reflected in human eyes became the first spark of civilization. We learned that we could shape the world even in small ways. And though we didn't know it, that realization would set the course of everything that followed. Fact 43. Migration was the next great leap. From Africa, our shared cradle, humans began to spread outward. Slowly, generation by generation, across land bridges and coastlines. They walked through deserts and forests, across frozen tundras and high mountain passes, carrying only tools, families, and hope. Over tens of thousands of years, they reached every corner of the world: Asia, Europe, Australia, and finally the Americas. Wherever they went, they adapted to heat, to cold, to hunger, to solitude. We became a species defined by movement, shaped by the landscapes we crossed. Fact 44. The earth, too, was changing beneath their feet. The end of the Ice Age brought rising seas, drowning entire valleys and plains that had once been habitable. Islands formed where there had been hills. Coastlines drew inward. Many of humanity's oldest myths, floods, vanished lands, and gods of the deep may echo those memories, passed down through countless generations. In a sense, every ancient story of loss is also a geological truth, the earth shifting, swallowing what once was. Fact 40. As the ice retreated, forests spread once again. Oak, pine, birch, and willow reclaiming the tundra. Animals followed: deer, bison, bears, and wolves. Humans followed them in turn, hunting, gathering, and learning the rhythms of each season. We became students of the land, reading the shape of clouds, the track of animals, the flow of rivers. Our survival depended on attention, on harmony. Every breath, every sound in the forest mattered. The earth was still immense and wild, and we were only a whisper within it. Fact 46. In time, humanity began to leave marks that lasted. Stone tools became more refined. Shelters grew more complex. We painted on cave walls, not just to decorate, but to remember. The handprints and animal figures found in caves like Lascaux and Altamira are among the first evidence of imagination. Proof that humans were not only living in the world, but dreaming about it. Each stroke of pigment was a message to the future. We were here. We saw this. We felt wonder. Fact 46. Agriculture was another revolution, the quiet beginning of civilization. Somewhere in the Fertile Crescent, humans planted seeds and realized that they could control the growth of life. Grains, fruits, and vegetables became stable food sources. Villages grew around rivers and floodplains, and the first communities formed. The world began to change faster than ever before. Forests cleared, fields plowed, animals domesticated. The balance between humanity and nature began to shift, subtly but permanently. Fact 48. With settled life came memory. the ability to store not just food, but knowledge. Humans began to mark symbols into clay and bone, early forms of writing that recorded trade, seasons, and dreams. Firelight flickered across the walls of the first homes. Tools became art. Necessity became expression. The earth itself became part of human consciousness. The soil beneath our feet no longer just a surface to walk upon, but a resource, a story, a home. Fact 49. Rivers were the lifelines of these early worlds. The Nile, the Tigris, the Indus, the Yellow River, each cradled a civilization. Each carried water, silt, and the promise of life. Humanity began to organize around the cycles of flooding and drought, planting and harvest. From those cycles came calendars, mathematics, and faith attempts to understand and predict the earth's moods. We built temples to honor the rain, the sun, the soil, forgetting that we were honoring the planet itself in disguise. Fact 50. By the time cities rose and empires began to form, the deep history of ancient Earth had already shaped everything we are. The iron we mined from mountains was forged in ancient stars. The soil that fed our crops was built from the bones of vanished forests. Even the air we breathe carries remnants of the first life that ever lived. Every human story is a continuation of the planet's own. We are, in every sense, made of earth, its memory, its motion, its dust. Fact 51. The first civilizations rose not just from ingenuity, but from geology. Fertile river valleys formed where ancient glaciers had once carved the land, leaving behind rich mineral soils. The same sediment that had been ground from mountain peaks over millions of years became the foundation for human life. The ground that grew wheat in Mesopotamia had once been seabed. The clay used for pottery had once been volcanic ash. Every ancient city was built upon layers of time, each brick and stone carrying echoes of deep earth. Fact 52. Long before modern science, humans already sensed that the world was old. Myths spoke of cycles, floods, fires, and rebirths, reflections of the planet's natural patterns. In some cultures, mountains were said to be the bones of sleeping gods, rivers their blood, stones their teeth. They weren't wrong, in a way. The earth is alive, shifting and breathing on scales too vast for any one lifetime to grasp. Ancient people felt that truth instinctively, even if they couldn't measure it yet. Fact 53. The rise of metal changed our relationship with the planet forever. To make bronze, humans mined copper and tin, pulling them from the Earth's crust and melting them in fire. It was the first time we reached into the planet's hidden depths for power. Over centuries, this knowledge grew iron, then steel, then the countless alloys that shaped our tools, weapons, and cities. Each step brought us closer to mastery and further from reverence. We had learned to reshape the very bones of the world. Fact 54. As civilizations flourished, they left their own geological signatures, layers of ash, pottery, and metal, traces that would one day be fossils of culture. Archaeologists now read these layers like chapters in a book. The rise and fall of kingdoms, the birth of agriculture, the scars of war. In a way, humanity became a geological force long before the industrial age, moving rivers, reshaping coastlines, altering ecosystems. The Anthropocene began quietly in the fields and fires of history.fact55. Time itself became a mystery. Ancient thinkers tried to measure it, not just the seasons, but the deeper flow beneath them. In Greece, philosophers like Aristotle believed the earth had always existed. In India, Hindu cosmology spoke of vast cycles of creation and destruction spanning billions of years. A poetic truth eerily close to what modern science would one day confirm. Even then, we were reaching for a scale larger than human experience, sensing that the planet was far older than memory. Fact 56. The Earth's own record of time lay hidden in plain sight, in cliffs, canyons, and riverbeds, where layers of rock told stories older than humanity itself. Each stratum marked an era, the rise of oceans, the fall of mountains, the extinction of species. Early naturalists didn't yet understand what they were seeing, but they felt the immensity of it. To look at a fossilized shell on a mountaintop was to glimpse a paradox. A sea that had once covered stone, now high above the clouds. The earth was speaking through stone. If only we could learn its language. Fact 50. When scientists finally began to listen, everything changed. In the 17th and 18th centuries, geologists like James Hutton and Charles Lyell realized that the processes shaping the world, erosion, sedimentation, volcanic activity, had been operating for millions of years. The planet wasn't static. It was alive, in motion. No vestige of a beginning, no prospect of an end. Hutton wrote words that transformed our understanding of time itself. The earth was not made for us. We were made within it. Fact 58. Fossils became keys to that deep time. Each imprint, each bone turned to stone, was a record of life that had vanished. At first, they were curiosities, thought to be remnants of dragons or giants. But as understanding grew, they became evidence, proof that the earth had known entire ages before humanity, and that extinction was real. The discovery of fossils revealed both the planet's beauty and its indifference. Species rose and fell. Entire worlds blinked out, and still the earth turned on. Fact 59. The theory of evolution tied everything together. When Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species in 1859, he gave the story of life its missing context, that all living things were connected, shaped by time, environment, and chance. Humanity was no longer separate from nature, but part of an unbroken continuum stretching back billions of years. It was a humbling revelation, one that rewove our place in the tapestry of the planet. We were not the end of creation. We were one more expression of it. Fact 60. By the dawn of the modern era, we had begun to see the earth as it truly was, not a flat expanse beneath the heavens, but a sphere of molten rock and ocean. Billions of years old, drifting through space. And yet, the more we learned, the more mysterious it became. The tectonic plates, the magnetic poles, the deep mantle currents, all reminders that the Earth is still alive, still changing, still capable of remaking itself. Ancient Earth never ended. We are simply living in its newest chapter, carried forward on a planet that has never stopped dreaming itself into being. Fact 61. As scientists mapped the layers of the Earth, they began to realize that the planet had rewritten itself countless times. Mountains that once towered higher than the Himalayas had long since eroded to plains. Deserts had become seas, and seas deserts. The continents, far from fixed, drifted like rafts upon molten stone. The theory of plate tectonics, proposed in the mid-20th century, transformed everything we knew. The Earth was not a static stage. It was an organism, restless and alive, its surface forever reshaped by unseen currents below. Fact 62. Even the sky above us holds the memory of ancient Earth. The atmosphere we breathe, that perfect balance of oxygen and nitrogen, is not a given, but a product of life itself. Billions of years ago, cyanobacteria filled the oceans, releasing oxygen as waste. Slowly, over eons, that oxygen accumulated, transforming a toxic planet into one capable of supporting complex life. Every breath we take is borrowed from that ancient revolution. The air in your lungs is the legacy of invisible ancestors who once floated in primeval seas. Fact 63. The magnetic field that shields us from cosmic radiation comes from the churning of molten iron deep within the planet's core. Without it, solar winds would strip away our atmosphere, and life as we know it would vanish. But this shield is not constant. It wobbles, weakens, and even reverses polarity every few 100,000 years. When it does, compasses spin, and the auroras bloom across the entire sky. These reversals leave subtle marks in volcanic rock, a geological record of the planet's magnetic heartbeat. Fact 64. Ice and fire have always been the twin architects of Earth. The great glaciations carved the continents, while volcanoes rebuilt them. Some of the most dramatic eruptions, like the Toba supervolcano 74,000 years ago, nearly ended humanity before we had truly begun. The ash blotted out the sun, cooling the planet and reducing early human populations to a fragile few thousand. Yet even then, we endured. The Earth tested us as it tests everything, and survival became part of our inheritance. Fact 65. The rocks beneath our feet are alive with memory. In them lie traces of ancient atmospheres, fossilized raindrops, and the iron signatures of vanished oceans. Deep within the Earth's crust are zircons, tiny crystals that have survived since the planet's infancy, over 4 billion years ago. When geologists hold them under microscopes, they're looking at the oldest solid pieces of Earth that still exist. They are, quite literally, the planet's first bones, fragments of a time when the surface was molten and the sky glowed red. Fact 66. The oceans, too, carry the memory of deep time. The salt in the sea is the sum of everything that has ever washed from stone, the dissolved history of mountains, rivers, and rain. Each wave is a chemistry of ages, minerals from volcanoes, sediments from glaciers, ash from ancient fires. When you taste seawater, you are tasting the Earth itself, ground down and reborn through endless cycles. The ocean is the planet's bloodstream, moving warmth, nutrients, and memory around the globe. Fact 6. Coral reefs, those fragile underwater cities, are among the oldest ecosystems on Earth. Some modern reefs grow atop the skeletons of ancient bonds that formed millions of years ago, layer upon layer of life building upon death. They are living time machines, delicate but enduring, connected across epochs. When corals bleach or die, it's not just an environmental tragedy, It's the fading of a lineage that has survived since the age of dinosaurs. A warning that even the most resilient systems can reach their limit. Fact 68. Humanity's story is a blink in geological time, but our impact is already etched into the planet's record. Plastic buried in sediments, carbon trapped in the air, metals from industry scattered across the soil, all will rise, creating a new layer that future beings, if they exist, will recognize as ours. We are the first species to alter the Earth knowingly, to feel the weight of our own influence. In a sense, we've become the newest force of nature, and with that comes both power and responsibility. Fact 60. The Earth has survived cataclysms before asteroid strikes, ice ages, volcanic winters. It will survive us too. But the balance we depend upon, the climate, the oceans, the fragile networks of life, is more delicate than we once believed. Every action echoes through the system. The air that warms, the ice that melts, the forests that burn. These are not isolated events, but conversations within a living planet. The Earth listens, and it responds, slowly but inevitably. Fact 70. And yet, the story of ancient Earth is not one of despair, but of resilience. The same planet that birthed life from fire and ash still holds the power to heal. Forests regrow, coral recovers, species adapt, and new ecosystems emerge. Time is both patient and creative. If there's one lesson written in stone and sea, it's that the Earth endures, not unchanged, but renewed. We are part of that renewal if we choose to be. Every generation inherits a world billions of years in the making, still whispering its ancient songs beneath our feet. Fact 71. The continents beneath our feet are still moving. Each year, the Atlantic Ocean widens by about the same rate that your fingernails grow, just a few centimeters, but over millions of years. It adds up to entire worlds. One day, the Atlantic will stop expanding, and the continents will begin to drift back together again, forming a new supercontinent. It's a slow dance, measured not in centuries, but in eons. The Earth has already done this several times, creating and breaking apart ancient lands like Pangaea, Rodinia, and Nuna. We live between heartbeats in that endless rhythm. Fact 72. The next supercontinent already has a name, Amasia. Scientists predict it will form roughly 250 million years from now, when the Americas drift northward to merge with Asia near the Arctic. The world then will look nothing like ours. New mountain chains will rise, seas will vanish, climates will shift, and species we cannot imagine will take our place. The idea is both humbling and peaceful. Long after we're gone, the planet will still be creating itself, as it always has. Fact 73. Even the oceans are temporary. In the far future, as the continents shift, the deep trenches and basins of the sea will close and reopen. Entire bodies of water will disappear, replaced by deserts or new mountain ranges. The ocean we know, blue, familiar, vast, is only one chapter of many. Someday, a new ocean will take its place, and the traces of ours will exist only in fossilized coral and mineral salts buried beneath alien sands. The Earth never clings to its past. It transforms. Fact 74. The sun, too, will change. It burns hydrogen in its core and over billions of years, that fuel will dwindle. As it ages, it will expand and grow brighter, warming the Earth beyond what life can bear. In about 1 billion years, the oceans will boil away, the atmosphere will thin, and the planet will become a scorched desert under a white-hot sky. It sounds tragic, but it's simply the next phase in a cosmic cycle that has played out across the universe. Everything that begins must transform. Fact 7. But long before that happens, Earth will still know many more ages, ice and thaw, bloom and decline. Forests will grow where deserts now lie. New species will evolve, shaped by heat, cold, and chance. The fossils of our time will become stones in distant mountains. To think about the far future of Earth is to glimpse both eternity and fragility, the knowledge that nothing lasts, and yet everything continues in another form. Fact 76. Deep beneath the surface, the mantle churns like a slow ocean of stone. It moves so gradually we can't feel it, but it's what drives volcanoes, earthquakes, and the drifting of continents. Some scientists believe the mantle may even have memory, that heat patterns deep within it preserve traces of past supercontinents, like faint fingerprints of worlds long lost. If that's true, then the Earth itself remembers everything it's ever been. Fact 7. There are places on Earth where time feels especially thick, where you can almost sense the weight of what came before. In the ancient rocks of Greenland, some of the oldest on the planet, scientists have found traces of life from nearly 4 billion years ago. Tiny chemical signatures, the faintest whispers of metabolism preserved through fire, ice, and age. To hold that rock is to touch something older than animals, older than oxygen, the first flicker of life on a still-forming world. Fact 70. Life, it turns out, is far more durable than we once imagined. Bacteria have been found alive in Antarctic ice that's hundreds of thousands of years old. Others survive deep beneath the seafloor, feeding on minerals in total darkness. Some can even endure radiation, vacuum, and extremes of temperature that would kill almost anything else. These microscopic survivors remind us that life doesn't just inhabit Earth, it is Earth, woven into its very chemistry, resilient and patient beyond comprehension. Fact 79. Every landscape on this planet, every mountain, valley, and plain is the result of both destruction and renewal. Erosion carves what uplift builds, and from that balance, beauty emerges. The cliffs that glow at sunset, the canyons that stretch for miles, the stones beneath your feet, all are born of violence softened by time. Ancient Earth teaches that creation and decay are not opposites, but partners forever intertwined. Fact 80. And perhaps the most humbling truth of all is this: the story of ancient Earth is not finished. It continues in every raindrop, every grain of sand, every seed that takes root. We are part of that story for as long as we breathe. When you close your eyes and feel the ground beneath you, you are touching a history 4.5 billion years long, a story of fire, ocean, and sky that still unfolds in silence. The Earth is ancient, but it is also alive, dreaming itself forward, one slow, steady moment at a time. Fact 81. The Earth has died many times, and each time it has come back to life. 5 major mass extinctions have swept across its surface, waves of loss that erased most living things. The worst, the Permian extinction, occurred over 250 million years ago and killed more than 90% of all species. Forests vanished, oceans turned acidic, skies dimmed. And yet, from that silence, life returned, new, strange, and resilient. Every extinction is both an ending and a beginning, a reset written into the rhythm of the planet. Fact 82. Fossils are the language through which Earth tells its story. But not all fossils are bones or shells. Some are traces, impressions left in mud that hardened into stone. Footprints, burrows, raindrops. There are even fossils of ripples in sand dunes, frozen mid-motion from hundreds of millions of years ago. These delicate imprints remind us that what feels fleeting can sometimes last longer than anything meant to endure. The wind passes, but its pattern stays. Fact 83. The world before the dinosaurs was ruled by insects and amphibians, by forests of ferns and towering horsetails. The air was thick with oxygen, and dragonflies the size of seagulls drifted between trees. The earth then must have felt slow and humid, like a planet breathing in deep time. It's easy to forget that such worlds existed, not imagined, not alien, but ours, separated only by the patience of geology. Fact 84. When the first trees appeared, they changed everything. They drew carbon from the air, cooled the planet, and reshaped the atmosphere. Their roots cracked stone, releasing minerals that altered the chemistry of the seas. In a sense, forests built the modern world, not just with wood and shade, but with breath itself. And even now, every inhale we take carries the echo of that ancient revolution in the air. Fact 8. Earth's magnetic field, invisible yet vital, has flipped many times throughout history. North becomes south, and south becomes north, a process called geomagnetic reversal. It happens slowly over thousands of years, and during that time, the field weakens. Ancient lava flows record these reversals like pages in a diary, showing moments when compasses would have pointed in impossible directions. The field has always recovered, stronger each time, guarding the planet from solar wind, preserving the fragile bubble in which life thrives. Fact 8. Deep time is hard for the human mind to grasp. We measure life in decades, centuries if we're lucky, but the Earth counts in millions. To imagine a mountain forming is to imagine a thought so slow it would take generations to finish. Yet, within those vast stretches, everything that has ever lived, loved, fought, or dreamed has unfolded in the same fleeting instant. To the planet, we are a spark. To us, the planet is eternity. Fact 8. There was a time when the world was covered in green, not by forests, but by algae blooms that turned entire seas into emerald mirrors. These ancient microorganisms fed on sunlight and nutrients, multiplying until they changed the color of the oceans themselves. When they died, they sank to the seafloor, layering into sediments that would one day become limestone, chalk, and marble. Every white cliff on Earth is built from the remains of ancient sunlight. Fact 8. Earth's heartbeat can be heard if you know how to listen. Seismologists have discovered that the planet hums a constant, low-frequency vibration that resonates through the crust and ocean. It's not caused by earthquakes, but by the endless interaction of waves, wind, and rock. You can't hear it, but it's always there. A deep, slow pulse that reminds us we live atop something alive, something vast enough to sing. Fact 8. The story of Earth is also the story of memory. Every layer of rock holds a record of what came before fossils. Minerals, isotopes, whispers of temperature and pressure from worlds long gone. The planet doesn't forget. It just buries its memories in stone, waiting for us to uncover them. Each discovery, each fossil, each crystal is a recovered moment from a history that never truly ended. Fact 90. And through it all, the Earth remains patient. It has no need for haste, no fear of endings. It turns slowly, breathing through tides, seasons, and storms. Civilizations rise and fall in the space between heartbeats. To stand beneath the stars and feel the ground beneath you is to know that we are part of something far older and far more enduring than we can comprehend. A living world that remembers everything and forgives us again and again as it turns toward another dawn. Fact 90. Every atom in your body was forged in the heart of a star. The carbon in your cells, the calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, all were created in stellar furnaces billions of years ago and scattered across the galaxy when those stars died. When Earth formed, those elements came together again, and over time they learned to breathe, to move, to think. You are not made of the Earth. You were made from it, stardust that learned to look back at the sky. Fact 92. The oceans once tasted different. In the earliest days, they were rich with iron and sulfur, tinted green and red under a dimmer sun. They would have smelled metallic, almost like blood, and shimmered with the colors of chemistry in motion. It was within those strange alien seas that life began, simple, fragile, and entirely new. In a way, the ocean remembers everything. It holds the dissolved memories of every river, every rainstorm, every creature that has ever lived. Fact 93. There were once mountains taller than Everest, now gone. Over hundreds of millions of years, wind and rain ground them down, their peaks turned to sand, their roots buried deep beneath younger rocks. If you could look far enough back, you'd see landscapes unrecognizable, mountain ranges higher than the sky, continents in places we can't even map. Nothing on Earth lasts forever, but nothing truly disappears. It simply becomes something else. Fact 9. The Earth breathes through volcanoes. They are not just destructive, but creative, releasing gases that build atmospheres, minerals that feed oceans, and islands that rise from the sea. The air we breathe now was once trapped in stone, released in ancient fire. To witness an eruption is to see the planet exhale, to be reminded that even in its violence, Earth is alive, reshaping itself in every era. Fact 9. Ice has its own memory. In the deepest cores drilled from Antarctica and Greenland, scientists have found tiny bubbles of ancient air, perfectly preserved atmospheres from hundreds of thousands of years ago. Each layer of ice is a year, each bubble a heartbeat from another time. When melted and studied, they tell stories of volcanic winters, warm interludes, and the delicate balance that life depends on. In those bubbles, the Earth still whispers to us. Fact 90. Even extinction carries the seed of renewal. When the dinosaurs fell, it was not the end of life's story, but a new chapter. From the ashes of that impact came mammals, small, quick, adaptable. From them, eventually, came us. Every catastrophe reshapes the world, and every survivor carries the blueprint for what comes next. The end of one age is always the dawn of another. Fact 97. Long before humans, the planet dreamed through other minds: trilobites, ammonites, giant ferns, thunderous reptiles. Each species had its own way of sensing the world, its own rhythm of existence. And though they are gone, their traces remain. Shells turned to stone, bones embedded in cliffs, pollen locked in amber. To walk across the earth is to move through a gallery of vanished lives that made our own possible. Fact 9. Human time barely registers on the planet's clock. Our entire history, from the first tools to the first spacecraft, would be just a blink in Earth's 4.5 billion year life. And yet, in that blink, we've reshaped continents, carved rivers, and reached into space. We are small, but we are powerful, and our choices echo longer than we realize. The Earth will outlast us, but what we leave behind will speak of who we were. Fact 9. There will come a time when no trace of us remains, when our cities crumble, our satellites fall, and our words dissolve into dust. But the atoms that were once us will go on, scattered into wind, water, and soil, carried by tides and tectonics into new forms. Perhaps one day, far in the future, they'll become part of something else that looks up at the stars and wonders where it came from. Fact 100. And so the story of ancient Earth ends where it began, not as a tale of destruction or survival, but of transformation. A world born from fire, tempered by water, softened by life, and shaped by time. Everything that has ever existed, from the first raindrop to the last heartbeat, is part of that same vast continuity. When you close your eyes and listen, you can almost hear it, the deep, slow murmur of a living planet, still dreaming, still becoming. And perhaps, in that quiet, you'll remember that you are not apart from the Earth. You are the Earth. For a moment, awake and aware before becoming part of the dream again. And that's where we'll leave it tonight, at the quiet edge of time, where Earth's story becomes less about events and more about memory. Our planet has moved through fire, ice, silence, and storm, reshaping itself again and again, patient beyond imagination. And for a fleeting moment, we are part of that same story, a single heartbeat in the life of a living world. If you're still awake, thank you for wandering through the ages with me. I hope this journey reminded you that the ground beneath you isn't just soil and stone, it's time itself, folded and breathing beneath your feet. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from, what time it is there, and which part of this story stayed with you. I'd love to know if this helped you unwind, rest, or simply see our world a little differently. Stay a while. There are more stories waiting of stars, oceans, and everything between. Until next time, sleep well, dream deeply. And remember, you are part of a planet that's been becoming for billions of years. And for tonight, it's holding you gently while you rest. Good night, see you soon.